whenever you have a pawn that has no enemy pawns blocking its path, or any other pawns to the right or to the left that could capture it, it becomes a passed pawn. So in this position, we can see this C pawn is a passed pawn. Why? Well, because there are no pawns that could capture it on the B file, and there's no pawns that could capture it on the D file. And it's got a clear path all the way to C8. There are no black pawns blocking it. So we call this pawn a passed pawn. And also on this H file, we see H5 is also a passed pawn. And that is because there are no white pawns that could capture it on the G file. And there are also no white pawns all the way down the H file. So this H pawn over here is also a passed pawn. So taking a look at this position, what about the E pawn and this G pawn on G6? Are they passed pawns? Well, you could say, hey, there's no pawns blocking this E pawn on E3. Maybe it's a passed pawn. Well, that's not exactly true, because let's say this E pawn tried to advance, say to E4. In that case, this F pawn could capture it. And because there's a pawn adjacent to the E file that could capture this white pawn on E3, it is not a passed pawn. And that is also the same with this pawn on G6. This black pawn, if he tried to move, let's say he tried to move to G5, then this white pawn on F4 could capture that black pawn. So in this position, there are only two passed pawns. This C pawn on C5 is a passed pawn, and the H pawn on H5 is also a passed pawn.